Meanwhile, an elderly man spent 26 hours waiting in Dunedin's Hospital emergency department to be admitted before a bed became available in a ward last week. The man in his 80s had recently had spinal surgery, which had become infected due to a lack of post-operative care. When other issues developed, he arrived at the hospital in an ambulance, only to wait 26 hours and 4 shift changes before he was admitted to a ward. The man's daughter, Anne, told me her father had earlier had his spinal surgery postponed due to the lack of an ICU bed, but finally had the operation and spent 10 days in hospital.
When he was discharged, bear in mind he's a man in his 80s, when he was discharged, district nurse was supposed to come the next day and deal with his wound, and he was supposed to have physio organised. 3 weeks later, no one had been near him. We ended up sending him down, so no post-operative care. And when we spoke to the hospital, I spoke to the hospital, they said, sorry, he fell through the cracks, and it's like, I don't know how that happens, but anyway, so he fell through the cracks. The wound was infected, it was infected, and then we had antibiotics and bits and pieces, and then earlier last week he had to go back in again because he'd lost feeling in his legs and his wound was infected, and so my brother took him in, and he got him in there sort of early evening, and in the early hours of the following morning, around 1:30, my brother texted me and said they're going to admit him up to the ward. And then it was around 7 p.m. there following that night when he finally got out of A&E. He was in A&E for over 24 hours with my brother. Saw 4 successive shifts of people. So that's, and then we finally got a bed for him, and that's been sorted out. And again, because he's under neurology, then again going to do another procedure, and he's due to go up for surgery, fingers crossed, next week again. Most people that I know with elderly parents in there hover, we call it hovering, and you hover around and ask questions and demand things, and I feel bad for the staff. I feel really bad for the staff. That the whole time that my brother was in A&E with Dad, every time he complained and said, look, what's going on? He's had nothing to eat. He's an old man. Like Craig was bringing him food and things like that because they're not geared up for it. And the nurses they thought it was unacceptable. There was nothing they could do about it, absolutely nothing. And all they could do was give him complaint forms. What is your sense of the kind of pressure the staff are under in there? Oh, incredible. Like I feel really, really bad for them. They have absolutely no control over this, and they're the front line, and the people are frustrated and upset and angry, and they're copping it left, right and centre, and there's absolutely nothing that those staff can do. I was staggered when I read, I think, one of your article, that there was only 9 ICU beds. It's staggering. I mean, all it takes is a car accident, and that's it. There's just nothing. I'm shocked, actually, but it's just got progressively worse. And I don't think it's not the staff's fault. They just don't. When they have these surgeries, they have to have an ICU bed for certain types of surgeries, and most surgeries
for post-operative care. So, in the first instance, when your dad's surgery was delayed, you were told it was because of a lack of ICU beds.
Correct.
Explicitly told that.
Neurological registrar told us, because he came down. He was sent down by Mr. Taha, who's Dad's surgeon, and he came down and he said, "I'm really sorry. We are ready to go. We have no ICU bed for you. It was taken up by somebody that had an accident," which is, we understand. I mean, it's just the way it goes. Somebody's critically ill and they've had an accident. That's fine. But the fact that we were specifically told that.
And so the surgery team and the theatre were ready to operate on your dad?
Correct.
And so because of a lack of an ICU bed, presumably they have to stand down?
Correct.
It's Anne Rogers, who is the daughter of the patient we were talking about. The Southern DHB's Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Nigel Miller, says he's very disappointed that any patient would need to spend such a long time in ED. In a statement, he says it's our intention to provide a service that responds to patients, needs in appropriate time. We are more than happy to hear from the patient or family and to meet with them. That from the Chief Medical Officer of Health.